Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, episode number 167 of Let's Go Racing Time with Joe. Dominic Onagon here with you as we're both under some interesting circumstances. I'm coming at you from the Dallas airport on my way to Miami for the weekend. Dominic is in the middle of trying to navigate a snowstorm in his home state of New Mexico before he gets to Phoenix for the championship race. But nonetheless, under these circumstances, we found a way to bring you a show in some way, shape, or form. We had to bring you a program today as we got so much to talk about. Championship 4 weekend in Phoenix with the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Championships on the line. We'll break those all down for you. Look ahead to this weekend's action and also look back on the weekend that was at Martinsville with Ryan Blaney getting the win to clinch a spot into that Championship 4. We'll go over our news and notes, our top headlines, get to our mailbag before we wrap up as well. Dominic, the dedication that you and I show to be able to do this in some way, shape, or form, crazy circumstances, but you know what? We make it work one way or the other.
Oh, absolutely. We have like this once in a generational kind of snowstorm hitting New Mexico. And Tyler, I was telling you before we came on air, and we're taping this on a Thursday night. We've got about 6 inches of snow here, and the forecast called for up to 9 or 10 inches. We get that in about a year and a half to 2 years worth of snow. So to have that all dumped in one night is very fascinating and kind of mobile tonight because you can hear my son in the background. He's a little mobile, so just kind of just following along to see what he goes. Kind of like how we're going to follow along the action this weekend.
Yes. So we might see him make an appearance at some point. If you hear a baby crying or something, a little context of what exactly is going on there on that front. But nonetheless, Dom, let's get right to it. Let's talk about Martinsville real quick. We won't spend a ton of time on it because I want to focus on this upcoming weekend here. But Ryan Blaney wins and clinches a spot in the Championship 4, a chance to defend his title. And, this season for Blaney, Dom, was pretty interesting because you think about it, that championship was so, I don't know what the right word to describe it is. I don't think necessarily ridicule is the right word, but everybody kind of paused for a second about Ryan Blaney winning the championship last year. Was he really worthy of being the champion with only winning 3 races and not winning the championship race? And then they got off to a bit of a slow start this year and then found their way back to victory lane, and he ran consistent for the second half of the season. And to win that race, to clinch a spot in the Championship 4, that number 12 team, they're very serious about defending their title here. This is I was impressed with what they were able to pull off to get that done and what they've done in the second half of the season, really.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a deja vu kind of moment, that walk-off win that the 12th team needed. And I would even argue, too, Tyler, maybe they're a little stronger this year, but certainly not the strongest car. We don't have the strongest car all year in the Championship 4 and Kyle Larson. But the way that 12th team had to go out with backs against the wall, stage points, no stage points, that really didn't matter. They needed to win. They knew what they needed to do themselves, Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, and needing to be in that striking distance at the end. And they had the better long-run car, and how he got around Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott and ran everybody down. He appeared to have the longer run speed. And I feel like that's a theme we have seen. We'll talk more about Phoenix here in a minute, but if you're going to win at Phoenix this weekend, you're going to need that long run speed. And we've seen that out of the Fords at that racetrack all season long too. So nonetheless, a great victory. Certainly though, Tyler, the race wasn't a race. Of course, it can't be a NASCAR race without a little bit of controversy. And it came down to a very important decision. It's kind of like decision 2024 here.
Yes, exactly. Let's elaborate on that for a second, of the decision and controversy and of NASCAR with the call they made there towards the end of the race. And I guess afterwards you had some words exchanged between Denny Hamlin and Mike Ford. Dominic, for those that don't know or need a little refresher, kind of catch up to speed of what exactly happened and share your thoughts here.
Sure. So that last lap, you see, let's even back it up a little more, about 15, 20 laps to go. These drivers are being made aware of the point situation. It's going to come down to a William Byron, Christopher Bell type scenario because you have Chase Elliott second. You have Ryan Blaney first. One of those 2 wins, they're getting that automatic 3rd spot in the Championship 4, and that last one was coming down to points. And with Byron having enough points in the bank and Christopher Bell being trapped a lap down, all William Byron had to do was finish 5th or higher. And those laps were ticking down, and the Chevy brigade behind him was Ross Chastain and Austin Dillon. maybe kind of forming a little bit of a wall of sorts, kind of like a manufacturer's wall to not pass him and make sure that he still was able to hang on to that fifth place position, sixth place, I should say. But then Christopher Bell chasing down the car that was ahead of him one lap down, and Bubba Wallace making a last-ditch pass. But even there, some speculation that the 23 might have accidentally broke something, or did he? And a failed attempt at the Hail Melon, if you will, Christopher Bell riding the wall through turn 4 on the final lap to pass Byron. It took about a 10 or 15-minute decision for NASCAR to make a call on how they were going to go about this. And ultimately, Christopher Bell was penalized as a safety violation. He was penalized as the last car on that lap. So he ended up finishing 4 points behind William Byron. But there for a while, we really didn't know what NASCAR was going to do. And I got to say, for NASCAR to make that decision the way they did, let it play out on live TV, certainly some drama, and maybe not the drama they wanted, but for them to make that call, kind of like an NFL official going through the review of play, I got to give them credit where credit's due to make that call the same day and not have some shenanigans announced days later. Maybe not the answer everybody liked, but kudos for the officials to making that call the way they did Sunday night.
So let me ask you twofold on this, Dom. Part one, did NASCAR make the right call? And part two, do you think they would have made that same call had it been a bigger name driver like a Chase Elliott or a Kyle Larson or a Denny Hamlin? Or was this, were they kind of picking on Christopher Bell here? Would those other drivers, you think, got that same treatment in this situation?
So part one, part two, so that twofold question there. I think NASCAR did get the call right. And based on that part one of the question, you go back and listen to the video and the audio and look, I'm not a body language expert too, but it was kind of telling with Christopher Bell answering the question, kind of looking down and kind of looking back up, answering those questions, whether it be on TV or the media scruffs that they do after. And then the second part, I think it's circumstantial that it just happened to be the 24 car. And the 24 car in this whole deal, Tyler, didn't do anything wrong, but the factors around him did. So I think that's why NASCAR came up with the penalties that they did with the 23 and the 1, the loss of points, the loss of money to both the car owner and the driver. So a lot to digest with that. But certainly the fact that it was a Chevrolet driver and a Hendrick Motorsports driver benefiting, and you hear the fan base talk a lot about how Chevrolet and Hendrick Motorsports might be getting preferential treatment over the years. To me, that is purely circumstantial that it was the 24 car, but I see where fans are coming from on why they would raise those questions.
Yeah, I think it's a very fair question to ask when it comes to that. And it's a tough call, but ultimately they made the right call. I don't honestly know if they would have made that same decision if it was somebody else, but wrong place, wrong time for Christopher Bell there when it came to that decision that was made. So with that sets up our championship 4 with Joey Logano, Tyler Reddick, and Ryan Blaney all winning races to advance the championship 4. And then William Byron getting in on points to get that final spot to make up the championship 4. And in case folks don't know, the format of what they've done the last several years, stage points no longer matter for this race. Still gets counted for guys outside the playoff. But it just comes down to where you finish. Whoever finishes the highest, whether it's in first or second, or if it's in 15th for that matter, walks home with the championship. So let's talk about these 4 drivers in the championship 4. Let's start with the guy that got that last spot in, William Byron. Dom, William Byron, I know we got in on points, but he's been solid this season, and we know he can win anywhere. He's been good in Phoenix in the past. I think he might even be the favorite this weekend, honestly speaking, to get the job done. And he thought he should have won the championship last year. It didn't work out. This is a chance for a redemption arc of sorts for William Byron after not getting it done last year.
And I think maybe the lesson learned there too. Now, I would say there's a slight disadvantage naturally because Logano's been locked in for almost a month. Tyler Reddick's had more time with his team to prepare. So the 24, not knowing if they're going to make the championship 4, not guaranteed. Yes, they do make it. So a little bit of a back to the wall situation there. If we want to be just speculating before any lap of practice has been turned. Yet you look at that. You look at where he did win there in 2023. He won the March race and how fast he's been. But they didn't have the long run speed last week, and they didn't have the long speed in this race last year. So you got to imagine this is going to be a race of attrition, and you're going to need to have a good long run setup. But certainly a worthy champion. And on the flip side of that too, Tyler, Concerning, not concerning. The 24 team has not won since April at Circuit of the Americas. 3 wins to begin the year with 8 of the first 8 races and no victory since, but they've been close.
They have. They have been very close. They've been a good team all year long. They just haven't been back to victory lane in a while. But the 24 team for me, I think is the favorite. I haven't looked at any odds. We'll go over odds coming up later, but I think they're likely the team to beat this weekend. The guy we talked about at the top of the show, Ryan Blaney, who clinched a spot to get in, and what I find interesting with Blaney, Tom, his story, it kind of reminds me of a Mark Martin or a Rusty Wallace type throughout his career, where he hasn't necessarily been stacking the wins, but he's always been consistently running up front. I think that's the thing that kind of surprised me about last week of the win in your win, was that that's usually not what he's been necessarily known for. He's just consistently running up front. That's not a bad thing, but to me, I feel like you talk about momentum. David talks about momentum all the time. Like that's a big deal for them in a prove it scenario like they were in last week, to do that, to set themselves up for this week here.
Certainly so. And it seems like it's mirroring 2023 with the circumstances. And we talked about at the top of the show, the 12th car is a little stronger this year, it seems, overall, but got to imagine some momentum's on your side. You got to be feeling pretty good. You've locked into the championship 4 as an outsider looking in for the second year in a row. You're playing with house money, I would got to imagine. And we've seen how aggressive Blaney can be, and we've seen how good he can be on the long run. So does that play out on Sunday? We'll just have to wait and find out. But certainly got to imagine there's some more momentum with that camp than any of the other drivers right now.
Yeah, I think so. Let's talk about Tyler Reddick, the regular season champion. He's run well all season long and just been so consistent. Top fives after top fives, week in and week out. He's had a really strong year. Now he is competing for this championship here. He won a couple of weeks ago. And what I find interesting, him compared to these other drivers, Dom, it's uncharted territory. This is the first time that 2311 has ever been in the championship 4. I believe it's the first time Tyler Reddick has ever been in the championship 4. I wonder how much the lack of experience is going to affect them, or have any effect on them at all going into this weekend.
It does make you wonder. And I wonder, too, if you could rely on past experience from Championship 4 appearances in other series, because Tyler Reddick is 2 for 2 in the NASCAR Xfinity Series when it comes to this format. And he did win that championship in 2018. He won it in 2019 with 2 different teams, I might add, too. So different manufacturer this time around. And a third
now, correct me if I'm wrong, when he did that, that was still when it was at Homestead, right?
Correct. So, yes, different track in this scenario. So something to consider there too. But Tyler Reddick has naturally been good at Phoenix. And we talk about like how Christopher Bell is always good at Las Vegas, but just hasn't gotten that first win yet. That same precedent is with Tyler Reddick here at Phoenix. We've seen that 45 car run up front. That 45 car was really good when Kurt Busch was in it. And then when Tyler Reddick took over, I believe he's posted 2 top 5 finishes in the 4 races he's run with that team. Runs up front. I think there's a really good chance we see that 45 up front when it counts.
And then the last one we'll talk about here, Joey Logano. He was the first one to lock in a spot. He thought he was eliminated from the playoff just a couple of weeks ago. And now here he is with a chance to compete for a championship. He's a 2-time champion looking for his 3rd championship. He's been there, done that before in this championship 4 format here. And they've known that they were in the championship the longest of anybody here. We mentioned the lack of experience with Tyler Reddick here. Total opposite for this 22 team and this Penske bunch, and then competing with a teammate with Ryan Blaney in the 12 car here certainly adds an interesting dynamic too.
Oh, certainly does. Team Penske's got to be feeling really good about their chances, because when not even a betting odd type deal, but just a mathematical shot, you have a 50% chance that you're going to come home with some hardware, and that would be for the 3rd year in a row too, I might add. So Team Penske has really figured out this championship 4 format in the next gen era. So it's just a matter of if that long run speed can play out. We saw Logano with a great long run car in 2022, which won him that race. And there's just something about Team Penske and those cars that get better with age on those runs as they go. I got to imagine, Tyler, we have long runs and not a lot of broken up racing like we would expect from seasons past. We might see a Ford driver win that championship on Sunday.
When you look at the 4 that missed the championship 4, their stats are pretty comparable. You could argue even better when you talk about Kyle Larson specifically than the four that made the championship four. This format, I've seen a lot of people complaining about it that, hey, we didn't get the right four and all this, that, this doesn't work for this sport, that they want more of a traditional points format or whatever it may be, that they're resetting it too much. We heard Denny Hamlin's complaints this past week. But, Denny, I'll be honest, like, he's been in this sport a long time. He didn't win in the old format. He didn't win in this format either. So as much as I love Denny, I'm kind of tired of hearing the complaining from Denny. Like, you didn't get it done either way. But nonetheless, Tom, do you feel like we got it right with this championship four? It does feel odd that Kyle Larson's not in it, but I can live with the others that are in it, though.
Yeah, Kyle Larson missing certainly is a big eyebrow raiser with the 6 wins, the great season that he had, but you got to perform when it comes time. And the 5 team had a really, really bad round of 8. I think they collected all but 1 stage point entering Martinsville. And we talked about that last week. It was going to take some stage points and possibly a win. And it looked like on the cusp of doing it. Just the race was 40 laps longer than where I think the team would have loved for that race to end. But outside of that, Chase Elliott had a good consistent year, same as Denny Hamlin, and you can make the argument there too for even like somebody like an Alex Bowman who didn't make that round of 8. It all matters to shine when it's time.
Flight is now boarding to gate
I think you're right. I think you're right about that. You got to do it when it counts, and those guys didn't get it done when it counted, and you live with the bed you make as far as that goes. Let's talk about the Xfinity and Truck Championships just real quick. Let's start with the Xfinity side. The Xfinity Championship 4 includes Justin Allgaier, Cole Custer, Austin Hill, and then AJ Allmendinger as your championship 4 there. Cole Custer was the one that got the job done last season, winning this race and winning the championship. But we've seen Allgaier run really well this year. Austin Hill has been solid, and even AJ Allmendinger. I know that he was, the 10th playoff seed and finished 6th in the regular season points, but he's come along here in the playoffs here. Dom, I don't have a great feel for this. I think I lean towards Cole Custer, but honestly, I could see any of these 4 pulling it off.
Yeah, and I feel like too with AJ Allmendinger maybe not having the best regular season and maybe winning where it counted, he might have somewhat of an advantage that might play out the field a little bit, but Austin Hill could be hit or miss. Justin Allgaier, we saw him leading this race in the spring, and he wrecked with 4 laps to go. And then Cole Custer as the defending champion, got to imagine there's a little bit of momentum playing into that. But I feel like putting a pulse on the room, Cole Custer may be your guy without a lap turned on track just yet, but we'll see how it all plays out come Saturday.
Yeah, we will. We will. Should be a lot of fun to see how that all goes there. Meanwhile, the Truck Series, the Truck Championship 4, it's going to be very wild to see what unfolds with the Truck Championship. Front of the show, Grant Enfinger, part of that Championship 4, kind of took an unconventional path to get there, but he's in. You also have Christian X is in, among others in this group. Corey Heim is in the Championship 4. And then the final one, Dom, who's the last one? Remind me.
Ty Majeski.
Ty Majeski, yes, thank you. I feel like this is kind of a 2-horse race here between Corey Heim and Christian X. To me, I feel like that it's those 2 and then the other 2. Do you feel like they've separated between the other 2?
Those 2 certainly have. When you talk about the class of the field in the Truck Series, they call it Heim time for a reason because he has run really well, arguably the best truck all year, especially of the regular drivers. And then Christian Eckes, my gosh, you look at the stats on that, 22 races, 21 top 10 finishes. It's a career year for sure, ultimately consistent with that 19 car or 19 truck with Bill McAnally. So they've certainly hit on some good things. But I feel like Grant Enfinger might have some sort of advantage to play here too. You get that win at Talladega, and your team's in the Championship 4, and then you go back that up with the win at Homestead. And what's very interesting there too is no matter how they qualify, because how this Championship 4 works, the 4 Championship 4 contenders all get to pick their pit boxes first, no matter where they qualify. So we know Grant Enfinger is going to have that number one pit box. So that's going to be very fascinating to watch. And when you look at the first practice numbers from Thursday, Heim, I believe it was Corey Heim first and Grant Enfinger in second. So it's going to be very fascinating to see if that speed translates to Friday night. But nonetheless, it's going to be a very exciting race to watch. And hopefully, Tyler, we're not talking about controversy in that race like we were last year. That race was about to end with 4 laps to go, and it went to, 4 overtimes? Race ended 1 hour after that first yellow flag fell. So hopefully we're not looking at another caution-fueled race that overshadows what would be a great championship run.
When I look at that truck race, I like Corey Heim. He's the one I lean towards. And speaking of Corey, while we're on this, Tom, I was surprised to hear the announcement that he's coming back to Tricon next year. I thought he wouldn't be moving up to the Truck Series, or maybe even an outside chance to be in a third 2311 car or something here. Were you surprised? Like, he's been dubbed the future of Toyota racing and, their top prospect and all that. Were you caught off guard that he's coming back to the Truck Series next year?
Yes and no, because we talked about on the show too how he was rumored to be that third 2311 car, but with the injunction and how that's all going and the charter sales going to be final, I think he had to pick somewhere, and it was coming to a point where he was coming to crossroads and decisions. And if that 50 car wasn't going to work out, he needed to secure his future. And what better way to do it than to go try and potentially go defend a title in 2025 or make another title run if you don't win it tonight or tomorrow night.
But even in the Xfinity Series, that to me was like, what more does he have to prove? What good does it do for him to be another year in the Truck Series as opposed to at least going to Xfinity racing?
Well, and we got to figure too, I feel like maybe most of the Xfinity rides are tied up or locked up with other drivers, or it could have come down to a money and funding situation. And maybe he has some funding behind him that he couldn't bring to the table. So hard to say, but I feel like with that impending future, with what the two teams are going to be going through over the offseason and the lawsuits, got to make sure your future is secure.
Hello, Christopher.
Say hello,
there
Tyler.
He is.
There's the little man.
For our audio audience, we are looking at Dominic's son making an appearance on screen, giving us a little tough love. He doesn't seem happy to see me.
He's one of our toughest critics, Tyler. He's very hard to crack, but when you get that smile out of him, it's very contagious.
Yeah, I mean, when we met, we got along great, but he did not look happy to see Uncle Tyler there. So maybe we need to turn that frown upside down or something. Dom, let's get to our news and notes, the latest headlines in the sport for happier news, maybe. Let's find out what else is going on.
So that was actually going to be the first headline, and we kind of segued into it, but Corey Heim making that return with Tricon in the Truck Series in 2025. Corey Heim announcing earlier this week that he will continue to race in the NASCAR Truck Series. And certainly, Tyler, I think that plays into the bigger news too. It's 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. The time of this recording, we don't have information on what the judges ruled Friday. So in theory, maybe the ruling is already out, but teams were in federal court on Monday, Tyler, in Charlotte, and Bob Jenkins, Jerry Freese, Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin were there with their attorneys, and Jack Kessler and NASCAR on the other side of the thing. And one of the takeaways from that, Tyler, was that I felt NASCAR had really made it clear that they felt like these teams were not worthy of having a charge because of how much they have disparaged the sport since the start of this lawsuit.
It's so funny. Disparage the sport. Yeah, sure. Right. Yeah. I know that people listening may already know the outcome, but I just find it laughable. I mean, I would be really shocked if these teams don't get the ruling they're looking for in this injunction and let this all play out from here at this point. I mean, 2311 and Front Row Motorsports have invested so much into this sport over the years, and it's a legal fight. It's not personal. It's not business. They at the end of the day, now I look at it this way, and I know some people are going to disagree with me on this. Hell, you may even disagree with me on this. They want to race. They want to be there. They've been through all this shenanigans for a number of years, and they want to stick around here. NASCAR may say it's disparaging and all this, but at the end of the day, I believe their heart's in the right place. NASCAR may not like it and how they've gone about it, but I mean, this is not anything to do with, they're not trying to say we want to race and we want the France family out of here and force NASCAR to sell. They're not saying that at all. They just want to race and they want more money. This is not personal. It's just business.
And I feel like too, Tyler, to even add, and I would agree with you on that. I feel like to add on to that point as well, when and maybe it's not a good comparison, but think about like when a district attorney comes in and charges somebody with a slew of charges, they do that so that way maybe something on the board will stick, or they can get stuff and use it as a bargaining chip for a plea deal. And I feel like too, and maybe I'm totally off base here, but the whole antitrust thing, maybe I'm sure to NASCAR that sounds extreme, but I think to grab some attention, the language that you have in that initial filing from last month, you had to use language like that if you're Michael Jordan, if you're Denny Hamlin, Bob Freeze, or Jerry Freeze, I should say, or Bob Jenkins, because you're trying to grab some attention. You're hoping something sticks. So maybe that is the strategy. Maybe that isn't. I'm just talking out my butt. But I would imagine that's the strategy play here, Tyler. That yeah, at the end of the day, they just want to race, but you need to grab some attention. This certainly does it.
Well, and I look for 23XI's perspective here. Like, NASCAR wants to take away their charters immediately and all this. Wouldn't it make most legal sense? You think about it. Here's an example I'd give, Dom. When a team files an appeal to a suspension, is the suspension still going through? No, the suspension's on hiatus till they have an official ruling here. If you're NASCAR with this case with 23XI Front Row Motorsports, from the legal standpoint, I would think, no, we're not going to take away their charters right now. We'll suspend it until we have we'll still let them race and let things run business as usual until we have a final verdict and a final ruling and go from there.
So, okay, let's do a doomsday scenario here, Tyler. This injunction does not get approved, it's denied. What do the next weeks and months and the years play out, and what's the long-term effect of how this would look, even just with the injunction not being approved, if that's what happened?
Then it's another legal case. It's another legal case, and it continues on in court till somebody gives up. Who blinks first, basically? That's what I would guess.
Yeah, and I got to imagine, too, you know who wins in this one, Tyler? Are the attorneys, because all the fees, I got to imagine. I remember seeing or hearing that one of the sides, I don't know if it was the NASCAR side or Kessler side, $2,000 an hour. So for the attorneys, wouldn't mind this thing keep going because they can just keep turning out money from either side.
Yeah, that's nothing for Michael Jordan. It might mean a lot for NASCAR, though, potentially. They're not used to going through this legal process, this challenge that they're facing right now. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Dominic, what else we got going on?
So looking ahead to this NASCAR race weekend, of course, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the odds one last time, Tyler. You had to guess, who's your odds-on pick for the NASCAR Cup Series Championship race at Phoenix on Sunday, and what are their opening odds?
I'll go William Byron. I'll go about the 600 range.
Okay, all right. Your odds-on favorite for the NASCAR race weekend for the Caesar Sportsbook is Ryan Blaney at plus 165 at the time of this taping. So
165. That's
plus
incredible
165.
odds.
And then Joey Logano plus 275, William Byron plus 325, Tyler Reddick plus 300.
Okay, I was way off, and I'm usually pretty good at these odds.
You are.
That's incredible odds when it comes to the race win. And I know that last year, Dom, we saw Ross Chastain win the race, but obviously he didn't win the championship. It was in the championship 4. But that was the first time in forever that the winner of the race was not the champion. I would think that, and David's talked about this in the past, what you see is guys don't want to be in the way. They don't want to be at risk of deciding who the champion is, that they'll move out of the way, they'll give them space, whatever it may be. I would be very surprised if one of these championship board drivers aren't the champion when it's all said and done.
And you usually see them running up front. You hear even two drivers give it a little more room than they usually would. And I think Ross Chastain said in his interview last year, he's like, I'm paid to win. I'm going to go out there and race hard. And I know Blaney and him had their fierce battle. But one of those deals where I got to imagine everyone's going to still race tough. But you might cut a break to a championship 4 driver that maybe you wouldn't have cut at Martinsville, or maybe you wouldn't have cut at Michigan in June. So certainly things to consider. And of course, too, Tyler, you don't want to blow a brake rotor when you're running 26 with about 25 laps to go and change up the championship 4 line up and cause a pit stop scenario. I'm sure you're catching on to what I'm talking about, right? I mean, even things out of your control, you don't want it. So certainly there's going to be a lot of drivers, I think, being cautious and giving that right of way to the championship 4 drivers. And especially hoping you don't blow a brake rotor going off into turn 3.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a very good point. So let's make some picks. I already said this, that I think the winner of all 3 races is the champion. And I'll give you my 3, then Dom, give me your 3. I'll start with the Truck Series. I think Corey Heim wins and gets it done. He's been fantastic all season. We mentioned the future of Toyota Racing. He's coming back to Tricon next year. I like Corey Heim there. The Xfinity title. I think Cole Custer defends his Xfinity championship. And this, I think, would be big for Stewart-Haas. This is the last chance for Stewart-Haas to win a championship as an organization. A lot of those guys aren't going to be back there next year with that Haas factory team organization. I think they want to go out on top. And Cole Custer, his last Xfinity race before he goes Cup racing next year. I think he's wants to go out with a bang. And then the Cup side of things, I'm going to go with the guy that I've talked about all show long. I know it's been a while since he's been in victory lane, but William Byron, the 24 team, Hendrick Motorsports, I think they're going to be locked in. I think that Hendrick team is going to put every resource, everything they need into that 24 car. I like William Byron to win and get it done. Dom, give me your picks for all 3. Start with the Truck Series, Xfinity, then end with Cup.
And I like that too before I say mine, because you have 2 first-time champions, right? I think you can make the worthy case for any of these 4 guys in any of the 3 series. Truck, it's time, baby. Corey Heim's going to get that title done, I think, in the Truck Series. And then you look at the Xfinity Series.
You better get that trademark before he does.
There we go. It's time. Yes. Yeah. Time, baby. And then you look at Xfinity. I got to just kind of follow your track here, Tyler. I think Cole Custer, being the odds-on favorite, has a lot of momentum, and that double zero can have a lot to fight for. Cole Custer gets it done in the Xfinity Series. Now, where we do differ in Cup, at the beginning of the year, we did our championship picks with David ahead of Daytona. I said William Byron was going to be your champion. I still feel like he might have a shot at that last run of the race, but I feel like it's all dialed in. The guy that's been naturally good, who I mentioned earlier in the show at Phoenix, he just hasn't been able to get over that hump. He can put all of his choking memes off to the side, and we can see the awkwardness of Steve Phelps handing that trophy over to Michael Jordan. I say Tyler Reddick gets it done on Sunday.
All right, Tyler Reddick. I like it. There you have it. That's our championship picks for the weekend. And it would be hilarious if Denny Hamlin won an owner title before he won a driver title. But I'm sure he'd be thrilled either way. If that were the case.
He's a winner either way.
All right. Let's get to our mailbag segment. We'll wrap up on this before we run. Our questions you can submit to us each and every week. DavidStarPodcast@gmail.com. Facebook at Star Podcast, X at Star Podcast. You can find us on all those platforms. Dom, I actually had a question come in from my own mother for you, believe it or not. My mom, Lisa, she had a question for Dominic, and we'll lead off the mailbag.
Tyler, you there?
I'm here.
There we go. You'd cut out. Last thing I heard you say was that a message or a mailbag question came in from your mom.
So my mom, I was telling her about your weather situation with the snow there in New Mexico. And she had a question for you. She was curious, just real simple. She was asking, does Dominic like snow?
I'll tell you what, I enjoyed it as a kid, and it was nice to have school canceled, that sort of thing. As an adult, it can be a little annoying. But I will say, to kind of, I guess, balance it all out, I think we've talked about on the show before, Tyler, on like some of the maybe the odd things or quirky things that we do that maybe most people wouldn't find enjoyable. I don't mind doing some manual hard labor from time to time. I think it's very relaxing, very soothing. In the summertime, you'll catch me outside in the yard pulling weeds. In a situation like we've had this week, you'll catch me outside shoveling snow. So from that aspect, I do enjoy the snow. Hey, you guys get a lot of snow out your way in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and kind of a two-part. I know that a little more north. You get a lot more snow.
So we don't get much snow in Dallas, thankfully. We usually have an ice storm, but 1 week a year. But I absolutely despise and hate everything about snow. I cannot stand it whatsoever. That's part of the reason why I live south now. I lived in Omaha for a while. I lived in the Kansas City area. I dealt with a lot of snow and I hate it. I hate the cold that it comes with, what it does to the roads, shuts everything down. It's just a pain in the ass. I cannot stand snow whatsoever. And I'm glad that I'm not you, Dom, that I'm not having to deal with the snow you're dealing with. But you know what? I bet for your dogs and your kid, you'll get some cute pictures out of it. I guess that's a plus.
There we go. Yeah, those would be some pluses on that. They have a little snowball fight tomorrow. But yeah, certainly one of those things that we were talking about before we came on air. We got about 6 inches a year, to about 8 inches a year here in town. We've had that in one snowstorm this week. So I don't know if that's a preview of things to come or if we're knocking out all the way. We'll see.
All right. Next question in the mailbag here before we wrap up this week. The question is from Mo. Mo wants to know, guys, the off season's almost here. What are your off season plans? Dominic, you have anything lined up yet?
This off season, man, it's going to be really nice to be at home. I think spend a lot of time with family and probably do a little bit of travel within the state. We have family in northern New Mexico. I'm going to be doing a 5K on Thanksgiving Day, so that's going to be fun. Had a little bit of a setback with training, but that's still nonetheless going to be a fun thing to do. And yeah, project wise, nothing really on the horizon. I've got a couple of things that you guys know. We got the Jeff Bodine book out earlier this year, so I'm kind of putting some fillers out on some other projects with potentially long form stuff on that regard. But outside of that, that will be keeping me busy on the home front and on the professional front. How about you?
Doing a little bit of traveling. Haven't really booked much yet for the off season. I know I'm going to be in LA here in a couple of weeks and spending the holidays with family and all that good stuff. But it's not my off season because we're still in the middle of the NFL season. We're only about halfway through, but all is good here. So certainly going to enjoy it and make the most of it as far as that goes. Before we go, Dom, real quick, what's going on with you? I know you're dealing with the snowstorm right now, but you're going to make the attempt to get out of it and get to Phoenix this weekend, right?
Should be clear with Interstate 40. They do a really good job here in our state in clearing the roads up the state highways, the interstates. So should be on the road Saturday. I'll be there for Xfinity and Cup in person to help with our team with Jonathan Gale, the racingexperts.com, and of course the rest of our team remote. So all hands on deck this weekend for the NASCAR Championship race weekend. And Tyler, maybe I'd rather be in your spot at an airport and just kind of fly over this whole mess. Nonetheless, it won't be a bad thing driving, but I know you're going somewhere. Man, care to share your details. Are you going to warmer weather than where I'm at?
Yes, I'm going to Miami. I need a little beach weekend. There is literally nothing on the itinerary. This is just a getaway. This is just a trip. So I am going to enjoy myself and have a great time in Miami this weekend and certainly be watching the NASCAR action. I'll get back in time to see the race on TV. So thankfully, I still get to watch the race Sunday. So that'll be great. We got to run. Make sure to subscribe to the show. New episodes out each and every week. Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review. Don't leave us one at all. Check us out on social media, X @Star Podcast, Facebook, also by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. For Dominic Aragon, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.